Hello everyone, DonTheCrown here, and we have an awesome Spiritborn video here for you today. This is going to be kind of my thoughts and feelings on how the Spiritborn felt to play, just kind of like my first impressions. I have a whole hour plus long video that is all of the gameplay that you can kind of peruse at your leisure, but I'm just going to kind of give you my thoughts and feelings on how things felt to play, because I know there's a little bit of a difference between just like watching somebody play and hearing about how it feels. Now, before we get started, one thing I do want to say is that I don't really take a lot of sponsorships on this channel. I notice there's about 77% of you guys that don't actually subscribe. And if you want to support the channel and stay up to date with the best ARPG content, just hitting that subscribe button does help me out a ton. Now, I am super duper excited about this. Basically, when they were telling us about how the different class plays, one of the images that they showed us in the presentation looked a lot like this one here, and ooh, that's very bright. This one right here, where they talked about, and this is all in my Giga document, this is linked down in the description down below. And when I saw this, and they talked about how Jaguar was crit, dodge, it had healing, there's a lot about fire and attack speed, I knew that that was the one that I wanted to check out first. All of the other ones also sound really, really cool, but Jaguar definitely spoke to me, which is, I'm going to kind of show you some of the footage for that. And for the Jaguar build, they gave us 3 Jaguar skills. So you have the Jaguar Ultimate, the Hunter, then you have Thrash, which is the Generator, and then Rake. And so you also have 2 Eagle skills, which was Soar and then Vortex. So Soar is kind of like the teleport from the Sorceress, and Vortex is kind of like monks pull in all of the enemies. And then we kind of like a Kick, which is kind of like Barbarian's Ground Stomp. Overall, I thought this build was pretty decent, but I did end up making a couple of changes, and we'll talk about that as I go. But the first thing I really noticed, like right off the bat, is just kind of how mobile everything feels. Like the Soar feels pretty good. You can go over walls with it. You can go like up verticals and stuff. I don't think you can go through walls with it, but it definitely felt pretty nice. Also, 3 of the 4 generators for the Spiritborn have some sort of dash built into them. The only one that doesn't have a dash is actually the Eagle's generator, but it does jab pretty far. And the Eagle is pretty much like, I think, all about like having more distance with some of its skills. So it's not necessarily like an up in your face build as much, although I do think that you can still play it extremely melee and be successful. Now, one of the things I really did like about Jaguar is just like the ultimate is really, really cool. And so here, I'm going to scroll back a little bit here. So basically this ultimate here, when you pop it, the Jaguar pops out and just kind of spins around. Now, if you kill stuff during the Jaguar ultimate, you actually have a 15% chance to reset it. Now, that's you killing it or the ultimate kill it. Either one is fine there. Let me see if we can find an example of that. Oh, here's me like finding a treasure goblin. We get a reset on the ultimate. I whiff on this one somehow, but I still somehow get a reset off of another spider. And like right now at this point, I think my build is both a little bit like undertuned, but also I was playing this incredibly poorly because for some reason they had us, instead of having the Jaguar Spirit Hall, we're using the Eagle Spirit Hall. And the Eagle Spirit Hall, if you like want to refer to the document, is all about using your evade. And so casting Eagle skill grants storm feathers up to 8. Then when you evade, they're fired, doing lightning damage, and they make targets vulnerable. And I wasn't evading at all in that clip, so pretty much these like spirit feather stacks right here are just building up and not really doing anything for me. Eventually later in the footage, I do switch over the Spirit Hall over to Jaguar, which pretty much makes it so that whenever you hit 4 times on an enemy, you'll get basically a whole bunch of damage that does that 4 damage again. So it just doubles your damage every time you do 4 damage. And so, yeah, it was definitely very strong. I felt pretty good at that point, but mostly that's just really on me. I think that you could make the Eagle thing here very, very powerful. Probably see like as I dodge, like all of those little lightning feathers go flying out, and those applying vulnerable is really, really strong. We also had the key passive here that made it so that you do 100% more damage to enemies that have vulnerable. However, when you hit an enemy that has vulnerable, it removes the vulnerable. So I just really overall was not like playing this build particularly well. There's definitely a lot of room for improvement in the gameplay itself. Like I said, this is just the very first character we got. Like, see, I'm like killing stuff off screen with the Eagle Evade. And we just basically hopped right into it, barely had any time to even look at stuff, and I was just really kind of in a rush to actually get out and just kind of play the class. So you can see I'm not evading, not using the eagle thing, just kind of using it to get around. And so yeah, the Jaguar though, eventually once I switch stuff around here, let me find, eventually here I switched over to the Jaguar Paul and just kind of like tearing through enemies. You can see like a lot of slashes popping off, and especially resetting the ultimate was a lot of fun. I actually was like just killing stuff in Helltide like crazy, and especially when the meter gets all the way full, you just pop your ultimate. When a whole bunch of enemies come out, the ultimate comes right back up. More enemies pop up, you pop your ultimate again, they all die. It was just really fun. It was a really fun build for sure. And there's like some things that you can even spec into in the passive tree that give you lots of bonuses when you pop your ultimate. Like for example, allows you to like free cast some of the skills that like the most recent one you cast. You just keep casting it over and over and over again for like up to 3 seconds. There's a lot of damage buffs whenever you pop your ultimate. And so it really does feel like this particular class is going to actually want to have an ultimate on their bar, because it provides a lot of benefits. And some of the ultimates are just like really stinking strong. Like the eagle one is pretty nice. You see the ultimate here, it's popping off, pop it off a second time. And yeah, I actually I think I crashed the game one time because I was hitting so many enemies with my ultimate at the same time. Is the really only explanation. You can see there the soar like going over the ledge, kind of like a barbarian leap or a sorcerer teleport. So it's a very solid like movement skill. Now here is me going into one of the strongholds, and I 100% thought I was going to crash when this was happening, but we actually made it in here, and there was 2 strongholds in the Nahantu region. And both of these strongholds are kind of interesting because they're a little bit longer than what we're normally kind of expecting in terms of a stronghold. And this had like quite a bit of objectives. So the first thing I had to do was kind of like go and run around and find out what the heck was going on. And then at all of these locations, there are these little things to kill and destroy. And once you kill all of the things, then you can destroy the cauldron in the center. And there were a total of 5 cauldrons. I think you had to go to like 3 different locations in here just to clear all of this stuff out. And it did take quite a bit of time. You can kind of see here, we're just skipping through. I'm still working on the cauldrons at this point. And then, so you kill the cauldrons. Then we have to fight the first boss, Darm the Bloom Weaver. And this guy like kind of was a little bit annoying because he really wanted to sit inside of this door, even when I would eventually kind of like move away from him. I think I died here actually. Oh yeah, I got one shot by his like gigantic hit. He kind of has a little bit of an animation. So you can kind of see here he reaches back and there's a big circle around me, and I just got absolutely annihilated by him. But I ended up like beating him, and then there is a whole bunch of little plants and stuff, and I thought we were done the whole stronghold at this point, but there's actually 2 more bosses to go fight, a 2v1 type of situation. And yeah, like this is just really interesting. They had like different animations that we haven't seen before, some different skills, and could definitely see like a little bit of some interesting gameplay here, especially because once you kill the first one, his brother like heals up completely and gets some more powers. This kind of like reminds me a little bit of season 5, the council, where they're gonna kind of like power each other up as they get weaker or as they start to die. And this fight definitely like seemed to be a little bit more difficult than your average boss fight. And then afterwards, when complete the stronghold, nothing seemed to happen. So I was kind of wondering if like there's something that wasn't in the build at this point, or if there, like I was like, there's no waypoint, there's nothing here. So I didn't really know like what the heck was going on, but I definitely assume that there's probably something going on with strongholds that we don't know about yet, which would be kind of neat. Now, I definitely looked around and tried some of the different skills here for the Jaguar character. I do think that there is quite a lot of fun here, quite a lot of interesting things like the rushing claw here that I have now on my 3rd button, which just allows you to just kind of like dash at enemies repeatedly, and you can kind of just keep that dash going like almost infinitely as long as you're killing stuff. And I have a whole build talking about why Rushing Claw probably needs to get a little bit of a nerf, because it can empower a build to basically go 100% dodge, 100% block, 100% uptime on just like a ton of buffs. And I have another video that will be published about the same time as this one, so go check that one out. But yeah, I think that the Jaguar overall was very satisfying to play, and I think that it's probably what I'm going to start with. Always been a big fan of like fire and, you know, large cats kind of like go along with my channel type of thing. And so the next thing I checked out was the Centipede. Now, first thing to say about the Centipede here is that it was most certainly bugged, and not like haha bugged, like actually bugged build. And so you see these little green orbs that are following me around. That's from a skill, Touch of Death, and these things just lasted way too long. There's some sort of bug where instead of adding like 0.5 seconds to duration from one of the aspects, it was adding like 5 or maybe even like 50 seconds to its duration. And they were just doing like almost all of the work. Like they just run up and kill everything. And like most of the skills seemed like almost inordinately strong on the Centipede. So I wouldn't be surprised if this got tuned down a little bit or like unbugged. So like even though Centipede looks like right now it's going to be the strongest build in the game, definitely keep an eye out for that. Now, one thing I noticed here, and you might notice in the background, is that they've changed how dungeons work a little bit. So there are now optional objectives inside the dungeon that provide a little bit of extra bonus loot and a little bonus XP. And so the like mission here has always been explore the Hierophant Pyre and slay the Priestess of Hatred. But I found a little like rock on the ground that you could take to a plinth and hand it in. And because of that, I was able to open a barrier that has like an extra treasure room. And so it seems like what they're doing with dungeons is they're making it so that it's not like this annoying, like you have to go and do all of these little side objectives before you can complete the dungeon. And instead they're making the side objectives like truly side objectives and optional that provide you with extra loot, which I think is a really, really good change to how dungeons are going to be. But getting back into talking about the Centipede. So the Centipede, the big skills here, like your main basic skill is Withering Touch. That's like the left click here, and you can like dash forward and punch, and you poison them for a pretty decent amount. The right click is Stinger, where you kind of do like a poison explosion around you. This is actually the highest cost core skill for the class right now, and I believe that this is it is 40 vigor cost, which is your mana over here, and that does 70% damage to enemies in the area around you, which is quite a bit of damage. Like Hoda, I believe, hits for 50%, so this is hitting pretty hard. And then the enhanced stinger makes it so that 50% of its base damage, which is like baseline 35% damage, is also applied as poison for 6 seconds. That's a lot of damage. That is a lot of damage. And poisoning is just probably a little bit overtuned at this moment, because the key passive that we were using here pretty much makes it so that whenever you crit an enemy, all of the poison that is on the enemy comes out in an explosion. It's not removed, but it just kind of explodes off of the enemy. And here's a great example of like why the little Touch of Death minions were bugged, because I pretty much end up like AFKing this event, and these little like firefly things just kill everything for me for the most part. And I don't think that that's going to be like that in the future. The other skills on the bar here is we have Toxic Skin, which is our #1 button. That makes it so that you have a passive ability. It makes it so that whenever you hit enemies, you poison them for 30% damage. And then you can activate that to kind of leave a little trail behind you where you can see the Centipede crawling in it. And which is pretty cool, and definitely poisons enemies there. And then #4 is the ultimate, where the the devourer comes up out of the ground, starts spewing poison and acid all over the place. As you can see in the background, like the poison is just going crazy. I don't even think I'm hitting any buttons here, and everything is just dying as I'm trying to figure out what's going on with the legendary abilities, because like like this is just insane, right? One thing I really do like about the Spiritborn is just the fact that all of the abilities are just really kind of flashy. And it really does feel like they captured the feeling of a class where you're like calling on a power that is greater than yourself. And so I definitely feel like my abilities are empowered by the Spirit Guardian. You can see here, I just like basic attacked that elite down super duper fast and everything died. Yeah, so like I do think Centipede is probably experiencing a few bugs in this footage here because it just felt so stinking strong. Going up to the boss here, I basically was like, I'm gonna see what happens if I don't attack this thing and I just let the spirits attack it. And as you can see, we basically get down to like almost half health here before I have to do anything at all. And very, very ridiculous. Now I just want to show you like kind of what the ultimate looks like here. I do pop it right at the end of the fight. Giant centipede comes out of the ground and just blasts with a laser beam, and that thing hits really stinking hard. And so very, very fun class, very, very fun build. I can definitely see this being very popular. It's not a minion build, but it does have a lot of like invincible tiny summons that do damage. There are some aspects that make it so that all centipede skills have a chance to spawn little swarms and stuff that go along and kill stuff for you. And since if you go and make yourself have the major spirit hall of Centipede, every skill will be a Centipede skill. That will just mean that you can like proc a ton of these little spirits. Let me just see. Yeah, it was here. Like I switched in the ultimate here for Jaguar just because I was like really enjoying it in Helltide. And I kind of feel like it's just a lot of fun. It might not necessarily be overpowered or anything, but it's definitely something about like just dropping down this little flame tiger and just tearing stuff up that is just very, very enjoyable for me, especially because like if you poison stuff, this is gonna be kind of a good way to potentially proc crits that continuously explode in an area, causing lots of damage. And I think it's probably a pretty good like clearing ability. After that, the next thing I went to go test out was the Gorilla. Now the Gorilla kind of reminds me a lot about playing like Hammer of the Ancients Barbarian. The payback skill, which you kind of see there, is kind of shoots out this like projectile line of stuff that's kind of like pulverized for Druid. But then the core skill, Crushing Hand, smashes down on both sides of you and it creates like 2 circles. And if enemies are inside both of those circles, they're going to take like double damage. And I believe Crushing Hand baseline is doing 25% damage. So if you hit by both of them, they're hitting for 50%. As you can see, the ultimate here for the Protector is really cool. The guy just comes slamming down, does quite a bit of damage, and he applies a barrier to you. And I believe he also makes elites do less damage as well. Let's see here. It continuously slams for 80% damage. It gives you a barrier for 15% of your maximum life every 1.5. And then he does 300% increased damage to non-elites, and he reduces the damage you take from elites by 30% for 6 seconds. So just really, really powerful. Has good clear, has, you know, good help against elites. It's not necessarily going to kill them for you, but it'll help clear out any other little like small monsters around you. Now, one thing to keep in mind about the Gorilla is that there is quite a bit of scaling with thorns in this build and with barrier, but the gear that we were given didn't really have much, if any, thorns. Here's again one of the little side objectives that you could do. If you go and like kill all of the elites there that have anima, you'd be able to pick that all up and then go through that door. But yeah, so the Gorilla doesn't really, in this particular video, have a ton of thorns. We definitely have some thorns. You can see enemies kind of dying as they hit me. They're hitting like, you know, quite hard actually with the thorns. But this is something that's probably gonna be more of a late game scaling type of build as opposed to early game leveling. This would probably be a really good hardcore build though, because every single like Gorilla skill gives you a barrier. If you go with the Gorilla Major Spirit Hall, it also provides you with a barrier. I believe there's barriers that like are based on how much damage you do, so it'd be very easy to keep up. I think it's Crushing Hands. Yeah, so Crushing Hand gives you a barrier equal to 10% of the damage it deals for 2 seconds. You can go up to 50% of your maximum life with that alone. That's Payback, the giant like shockwave thing. And so I think all you have to do is pretty much just stack health and thorns into this build, and you're probably just gonna like absolutely crush it. And yeah, it's just a lot of fun. You felt very tanky. Like I never felt like I had to use my health potion at all at any point in here, and just always very, very safe. So I could see this, like I said, being very, very popular in hardcore. Let's skip ahead here to the boss. So this probably did not have an insane amount of damage compared to obviously the Centipede being bugged, but the damage wasn't necessarily all that bad either. As you can see, definitely a little bit lower, but you know, our health, we stay healthy pretty much most of the time here. We take a hit there that like is, you know, a telegraphed hit, which should hit pretty hard, and it, you know, just barely goes through our health at all. And the barriers just continuously pop up whenever we do take damage. The barrier just continuously comes up as long as we just keep spamming our crushing hand, which is just very helpful for staying alive and staying healthy. Also, the ultimate I feel like had like a pretty short cooldown. Like it comes up, you know, pretty quickly, and there's I believe one aspect that makes it so that your cooldowns are 40% shorter if you are like moving at all. So after I played that, I knew that I needed to hop on the Eagle. I was kind of like running out of time here a little bit, and I really wanted to check this out. And the Eagle is definitely kind of interesting because it has a lot of skills that are ranged, which is kind of strange for like D4 right now, because a lot of the melee classes don't really have like very much range at all. Even the rogue, I doesn't feel like has a ton of range, and so the Eagle is kind of like the rogue part of the Spiritborn kit. And so you have things like on the skill bar here, we have Rushing Claw now on number 2, which is kind of like a dash. Number 1, I believe, is probably counterattack. Yeah, counterattack, which gives you 100% dodge for 2 seconds. The core skill for this is Quill Volley, which kind of like throws out a like volley of blades, and then they come back to you. There is an aspect that makes it so that when they reach the max distance, they explode, doing a whole bunch of damage. So you can totally like make this like either a close range skill where you're like hitting with all of the quills and they're coming back to you, or a long range skill where you're like exploding them at the distance. And then other skills that are on there, we have Razor Wings, which is kind of like a boomerang type of skill. Let's get in the dungeon here. So the number, that's Razor Wings right there. And then most interestingly to me was the fact that the ultimate has 3 charges to it. And so it just means you can like just kind of spam it a little bit. There are like passives in the ultimate section that really benefit you from having an ultimate. So there it is right there, having an ultimate on your bar, and you can see like the cooldown on that is coming back really, really quickly as, you know, 3 charges. And so I think that there's definitely going to be builds around spamming your ultimate with this bird ultimate, because it's just very, very powerful thing to have. And so, for example, there's Resolution, which makes it so that casting an ultimate skill gives you 5, 10, or 15% increased damage to elites for 3 seconds. And this is doubled if you're only fighting one enemy. So if you're fighting a boss, that's like 30% multiplicative damage for 3 seconds after dropping your ult on them. You get more of your resources when you have an ultimate skill equipped. There's also enemies you kill while an ultimate skill is active, gives you a stack of supremacy. Each of these increases your damage by up to 3%. For a total of 30% damage boost. And then when the ultimate skill ends, you get 5 stacks of supremacy, so that'd be like 15% multiplicative damage, but then you lose 1 stack per second. So between the first one that gives you 15% damage to elites, and then that one which gives you 5 stacks, that's like about 30% multiplicative damage, which is pretty nice. There's also casting an ultimate skill, makes you unstoppable for up to 3 seconds. There's hitting enemies with ultimate skills, heals you for 6% of your life. I'm not sure how that works if like multiple targets will heal you multiple times. And then the last one, which I think is really neat, is that upon casting an ultimate skill, the last potency, defense, or focus skill that you cast prior to the ultimate becomes free to cast for 3 seconds. And so our number 3 skill there, Razor Wings, you can actually spec it so that it uses all 3 charges to kind of like send spiraling blades out around you. And so you could cast Razor Wings, drop your ultimate, and then just spam Razor Wings out around you for 3 seconds, and then you could drop your ultimate again, cast Razor Wings again, which I think is pretty neat, especially because counterattack here, this buff that is popped that makes you like 100% dodge. If this is active when the Razor Wing comes back to you because it's a boomerang, it will bounce back out again. So I definitely think that there's a build there, and I actually did make a build guide talking a little bit about this, so go check that video out. In terms of the Spirit Hall for this class, it was definitely a little bit easier to kind of like get into the vibe of this with the Eagle setup, because it really wants you to do a lot of evading. So if we talk about the base skill Thunder Spike here, so Thunder Spike, you quickly jab with your piercing strike and does 15% damage. Your third attack pierces farther, doing 23% damage, and it reduces your evade cooldown by 5 seconds. So that is a lot of cooldown reduction. It also generates 5 additional vigor if you've moved in the last 2 seconds. And then you can either make it so your third strike strikes back again, pulling in and knocking down distant enemies for 3 seconds, or you can make it so that when you evade, you attack with Thunder Spike along the way and make enemies vulnerable for 2 seconds. So you can pretty much kind of evade and attack the whole time. Now, I think that this has the potential to be a interesting just build all on its own. I know right now that basic skill builds are pretty popular, but there's this weapon called Sepazatonic. I don't know how we're going to say this. The Sepa Quarterstaff. And this makes it so that your basic skills deal 200% increased damage and always use their third attack. And every third cast unleashes triple strikes. And so remember that here on Thunder Strike, if you, or Thunder Spike, sorry, the third attack can either knock down enemies and it also reduces your evade cooldown by 5 seconds. And then you can make it so that when you evade, you attack with it. So I'm pretty sure with the combination of that weapon and Thunder Spike, you could just probably evade all day. Just evade infinitely, and it'll just strike and then reset your evade cooldown by 5 seconds, and then you evade again, reset your cooldown, you just evade, 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 evade. And there is a passive in there that makes it so that when you are evading, you also have a 100% chance to dodge. And so I think this could just be really fun and really ridiculous. As you can see here, I'm kind of like making sure as I'm fighting the boss to try to evade, and all of those like kind of like eagle feathers do target in on the boss. That's coming from our Spirit Hall. And so you see here, I'm going to try, oh, that's Rushing Claw. There's a lot of mobility in this class, and it's just really like quite a lot of fun. Like, it does really feel like you're moving around. You're not like stuck to the ground casting a whole bunch. Even when you are attacking, you can still continue to move. There's a lot of things to encourage you to evade and to use your different skills. And yeah, I just really enjoy this. I think those people are going to really hop on this class. There's a lot of different ways to express yourself, whether you want to like go lots of slashing attacks with Jaguar, if you want to be very mobile with Eagle, if you want to be kind of tanky with Gorilla, or even Centipede a little bit, or if you just want to do a lot of poisoning with Centipede. I think that there's easily going to be like a solid 4 different archetypes just based on that. But I think there's probably like 10 or 12 different builds for this class right now that have a potential to really shine. So I'm really looking forward to seeing how this develops. Let me know what you guys think in the comments down below. Which Spirit Guardian are you the most excited about? And if you want to see all of the footage, this is also going to be uploaded on my YouTube channel. Let me know what you think over there as well. I'm so hyped for you guys to get to play this. I'm so very thankful that Blizzard invited us all of us out to go and play it. And I'm really looking forward to getting my hands on it again. Thanks for everything. We'll see you next time.